on, everyone? It's your boy Manny here once again. Welcome back to another WNBA lineup advice video here for you guys at DFS Zone. And before I get started, I appreciate you drop a like. And if you have not, as of yet, subscribed to the channel, please do so down below. And do not forget to turn on your post notifications. This way you do not miss any of my new uploads. With that being said, today's Tuesday, August the 21st, 2018, and we're here. Finally, the WNBA playoffs begin tonight. Elimination games for both games, as we know. It's going to be interesting. We got Dallas at Phoenix, Minnesota at LA. And before I go over them, man, really two key points to really take into consideration in these games. You must know, I'm sure a bunch of you do know, but there are a number of you that follow and are viewers of my videos, and you're here more so because you're still trying to learn how to play DFS, especially WNBA, but DFS in general. And we're here in the playoffs now, ladies and gentlemen. In playoff time, elimination games, you could expect two things to happen, obviously. One thing's for sure, all teams are going to play all out. Another thing to take into consideration in elimination games and playoffs, and especially two-game slate, like always, we always say here at DFS Zone, two-game slates, everybody's available, everyone is in play. It's just about finding the proper matchups or the players that have played probably the best against that opposition throughout the season, or has been playing well or as well during the course of the last few games, going into these matchups today. So we'll look at all those. We'll look to see at team stats. As you guys know, I always do all that. I will come back. This was all a first look, but I have a good idea of who I really like going into today's matchups. Another thing to also take into consideration is that everybody's not only in play, but the star players, the stud players for each one of these teams tonight are going to play massive minutes. They're going to have to, because there is no tomorrow if they don't win today. So, got to take that into consideration as well. Look for those stud players, best matchup, and hope that those players do play massive minutes. I expect a lot of these players to play, 30 to 35 minutes, maybe even a full game. It's all that is very much possible. In an elimination game, you just want to win, and you're going to play with your best players on the court. So expect these teams to play with their best players. That's usually their starters, and usually their stud players will get more minutes as well as more shots. So take that into consideration and going into today. I think that's the biggest tip I could give you guys today. So Dallas at Phoenix, right? We have implied totals for that game, 175.5, with Phoenix at home favored by 6. These teams have played each other 3 times during the course of this season, and Phoenix won 2 out of the 3 matchups. Phoenix comes in here winning 4 straight games, so they are playing their best basketball right now. Another thing that I took into account, and take this into account as well, they've won 4 straight, but they've been putting up a lot of points. Offensively, they've been really clicking. Their 3 stud players, Bonner, Taurasi, and Griner, have been playing solid. They are, in the course of those 4 wins, they have averaged 95 points per game in those 4 games. So they definitely are really shooting the rock well. They're playing really good as a team. Talbot is starting and playing quite a bit of minutes and doing fairly well. January as well. So, the team has been playing well. They're probably playing the best they have played in quite a while. So I expect this to be a very, very tough matchup for Dallas. Dallas comes in here. They've only won 1 game out of their last 11. They just barely got into the playoffs. I don't think they even deserve to be in the playoffs for as poorly as they played. But they did play a good enough game against Las Vegas to get themselves into the postseason. And obviously, the key here is, hey, if you can get into the postseason, anything can happen. So they need 2 things to happen, all right? They need their star players to, 1, play very well today. Diggins Smith and Liz Cambage is going to have to ball their asses off. And they're going to need 1 role player or 1 other starter to play fairly well today and to give them a shot. And that's going to have to be, for me and mine, it'll have to be the Ms. Gray in the backcourt with Diggins Smith having a great game as well, or possibly in the front court. I would say the one I would favor right now off the top would be Miss Stevens. But we'll look into it a little bit more now as we go over the actual games. These 2 girls, these 2 teams as well, these are the numbers they put up in the 3 games, and I like to get this information. In the 3 games, Dallas has given up to Phoenix 45 points up in the front court, while Phoenix has given up to Dallas 52 points in the front court. So definitely an advantage for Dallas, at least in the 3 games thus far. that they have had success in the front court with Liz Cambage and company. All right. In the backcourt, Phoenix 32 points per game given up to Dallas, while Dallas gave up to Phoenix 34 points per game. And I'm going into this matchup, I'm definitely thinking Phoenix backcourt off the top of my head right away. You think of Taurasi, you think of Bonner, at least in FanDuel. Bonner is a it plays the 4 pretty much as of right now. Tolbert is playing the 3. But I kind of like still the backcourt of Taurasi, and knowing here on FanDuel you got Tolbert as well as January and as well as Bonner. All 4 of them are here in the guard spot, which is really weird because those are 4 out of their 5 starters. Their 5th starter is in the forward spot, and that's Ms. Griner. So over the course of the last 3 games, very, very important too. I always look at those numbers, 3, 4 games, maybe the max 5, but I'm going back 3 games. Phoenix has been given up to the opposition 55.3 points per game to the front court and 30.6 points per game to the back court. Now that's fairly close to what they've done. They've given up to Dallas, excuse me. They have given up 2 more points to Dallas in those 3 games against Dallas, and just slightly a little less a little bit more in the front court to the last 3 opponents they played. Dallas, on the other hand, they have come in the last 3 games, have given up 60 points per game to the front court. So that automatically tells you, man, we could consider Griner, we could consider Bonner, because Bonner definitely gets physical, gets rebounds, and gets in there. That's an area we can target. As far as points per game given up to guards, Dallas has been giving up 30.3, so slightly a little bit more than Phoenix. All right. When we go to the actual game and the players itself, I love Taurasi. Just looking at the numbers here, as far as the 34 points per game given up to guards by Dallas, as well as knowing that here on the team stats, if you look at opposition's threes, Dallas is giving up 35% of the opposition. They're having that tough time handling 3-point shooters in games, and 35%, and they only are shooting 30% as a team, so they're basically a negative 5%, and they're facing a team that's very good at shooting threes. As you can see, Phoenix in the matchup against them, they're 35.2% 3-point shooting team. So that automatically tells you, hey, January, Tolbert, Taurasi, Bonner, all these girls are in play, and it's going to be tough. So I definitely like Diana Taurasi's chances here today, and I love DeWanna Bonner as well. Okay, Taurasi's coming in 3 out of the last 5 games at 34 plus. That's pretty much her average. She has 50-point upside, as you can see. All right. Last game against Dallas, unfortunately, she was ejected early on. She did play about 4 minutes. You can see here, had 4 fantasy points, pretty much 5 points from the floor in 4 minutes. Okay. So she has done well there. The game before that, she played 31 minutes and got 26. Not really awesome numbers against Dallas, but in the last 3 games, she's shooting 43% and 35% from 3, and she's averaging 9 assists a game, which is pretty darn good, and averaging 40 to as much as 41 fantasy points per game. So Taurasi has been playing really well. That also includes 1 steal on average, and that is actually 5 or 6 points above her average. And she's averaging 40, and she's at 34 for the season. So she's actually been playing very well. But against Dallas, she shot well from 3, 56% from 3 versus Dallas, and that is definitely a area to target for her today. As I already stated in the team stats over here, that Dallas has been coughing up 35%. Out of the teams here in the slate today, they're pretty much, both of these teams give up 35% pretty much to the opponent. But Dallas definitely is not a good 3-point shooting team. So you got to give the advantage to Phoenix and Diana Taurasi. So I love Taurasi here in this matchup. DeWanna Bonner is another one to consider. Remember, DeWanna plays pretty much the 4. She plays the 5 at times. She could play almost anywhere on the court. But here on FanDuel, she's been a guard all year long. And when you look at her, you're looking at her as a front court player. So her matchups are going to be as her against maybe Kayla Thornton, or maybe Gloria Johnson, or Azurá Stevens majority of the time. So I like those matchups for DeWanna Bonner. DeWanna Bonner, 6 out of her last 7 games, has been smashing her average. Her average is 34, and look at these numbers: 47, 59, 48, 41. I mean, 3 straight games at 47 plus and 28 in her 2 games. She hasn't had big numbers against Dallas, 28 and 30 minutes in the last matchup. And then prior to that, 27 minutes, 34 minutes. 34 minutes, 27 spot. Right here. Okay. But she's been playing so well lately. In the last 4 games, she's averaging 46% from the floor and 36% from 3. Averaging 47 to almost 48 fantasy points per game. That is 13 points higher than her average. So those numbers will look good. Her numbers versus Dallas, a little bit down, but I love the way she's been playing as of late. I'm not gonna bear too much into her shooting only 41% against Dallas and only 25% from 3, but she is averaging 3 assists a game, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks, and 7 rebounds per game, and averaging nearly 35 fantasy points against Dallas. So her shooting percentage is a little low. Her 3-point shooting is even lower, but she's doing all the other necessary things to put over those fantasy points. So with that, I definitely like Bonner in today's matchup. Skylar Diggins-Smith, 7,300, is in play as well. I like Taurasi and Bonner better than Diggins-Smith here, but Diggins-Smith, 7,300, you pretty much need 36, 37 from her, and she's averaging 35. And then, 3 out of her last 6 games, she's had 36 plus. It goes 1, 2, pretty much 3, 1, 2, about 2. Actually 30, she's averaging about 32 plus in 1, 2, 3, 4 out of her last 6 games. Not too bad. And 2 out of her last, she's had 40. What we got here? 42 and 48. 242 or better games over the course of that span too. So not too bad. My only concerns with her is that over the last 4 games, she's only averaging 35% shooting percentage and 30% from 3. That is 5-6 points below her average. That's the only concern there. And against Phoenix, she hasn't been all that great either. In 3 games against Phoenix this year, she's shooting 37% from the floor and 11% from 3. The only area that she is really good at right now in the 3 games against Phoenix is that she's been getting to the free throw line, and she's at 100% there. All right, she's averaging 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and nearly 2 steals a game. Those are very, very nice numbers as far as defensively. And averaging about 34, almost 35 fantasy points in those games. But not the numbers percentage-wise as far as field goal and 3-point shooting have been really, really bad. The numbers are better for Bonner and Taurasi. And with that, right now at this moment, again, first look, I will come back. We'll have a live show later, and we'll discuss it a little bit more. But right now, I definitely like Taurasi and Bonner a little bit more. But Diggins-Smith is definitely someone in play. Alicia Gray is someone to consider at 5,700. You drop the price down considerably from these 3 studs here, and she plays usually massive minutes. Okay. 5,700, you need pretty much about 27 from her, and she's averaging 20. In the last 5 games or so, she's been averaging at least her average or better. This is pretty much a 20 here. So 5 straight games at 20 plus. She did have a 15 spot in the last game against Phoenix in 21 minutes. And in the last 4 games, she's pretty much averaging 43% shooting, 18% from 3, which is really, really poor. Her season average is 27 there, so that is, definitely low. Not a good 3-point shooter as of late, but field goal percentage-wise, as far as free throws, she's been shooting well from the floor, from the foul line, 86%. And she's been getting to the line pretty consistently too. 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2.5 steals, which is pretty impressive over the course of the last 3 or 4 games on average. And she's averaging almost 25 fantasy points per game during that stretch, which is about 5 fantasy points more than her average. So as of late, she's been playing fairly well. Shoots better at home, but unfortunately on the road, she shoots a lot better at home. On the road, she's averaging 37% shooting and 23% from 3. But against Phoenix, and I said this in 3 games, she's looked pretty good. 59% shooting from the floor and 40% from 3. Granted, she only took up 5 threes, hit 2 out of the 5, and averaging 19 to almost 20 fantasy points. So I kind of like those numbers. At 5,700, there is going to be some nice value or better, at least opportunities for better plays in the next game between Minnesota and LA, I believe, as far as in the 4K range. But I think in this matchup here, she is pretty good. And I think that she is someone that we can definitely consider here in this game. Talbert for Phoenix, she plays pretty much the 3 spot. She's been getting enough minutes. I don't know about the price 5,500 when I can go with Gray, who's pretty much we know is going to play most of the game. And if she happens to have a fairly good game, she could put 30 or better. Talbert, she just got to 30 just yesterday or the last game she played, which was for the first time. So now at least we know she can get up there in that midst. But she's more of a 20 to 23 average girl, at least for me, in my opinion. Her numbers have not looked too bad in the last 4 games, 54% shooting and 42% from 3, but only averaging about 20 fantasy points because she's basically a shooter. She doesn't do a whole lot of anything else. Her home and away splits are good. She's very good at home, 51%, so if you want to take that into account. And shoots 39% from 3, averaging about 11 or 12 fantasy points per game. But I think there's a lot of opportunity over here when we get to Minnesota and LA at prices below 5,500, where you could probably get some decent plays who could possibly get you 25 to 30 fantasy points at a cheaper price. Brianne January, same thing. Last 3 games, 70% shooting, 64% from 3. Averaging 16, 17 fantasy points per game, not too bad. She is $700 cheaper, so I would think she'll probably be a better play here. She definitely starts as well as Talbert, and she shoots the 3-point shot pretty darn well, too. At home, she's shooting 43% and 50% from 3 and averaging 16 fantasy points to as much as 17 per game. So I think her numbers look very good at home, and this is not a bad spot for her to be in. She has not shot well against Dallas. You got to take that into consideration as well. But like I said, I'll take a look at it a little bit further, and we'll see if she could be a valid play later on. In the forward position, Griner definitely in play. There's no doubt about it. Brittany Griner, man, 8,700. You need about 44 from her, and she's averaging 40. The big dogs here for both these teams have not played well against one another. In these matchups, they have been pretty tough on one another. But something's got to give today. Somebody's going to have a fairly good game, or both of them are going to have good games. Griner and Cambage speaking here. Griner, 5 out of her last 7 games, pretty much at 40 plus, which is around her average. She has 50-point upside, as we all know. In games against Dallas, 28 minutes, put up 30 points in the last game. And then the game prior to that, she put up 33 spot in 27 minutes. During the course of our last 4 games, she's shooting 59% and 70% from the foul line. What I like is that she's been averaging 11 rebounds per game during that stretch, and she doesn't normally get that many on a regular basis, but she's averaging 11 over the course of the last 3 or 4 games. And she's averaging also 3 blocks pretty much on average per game, and that's because due to that big 7-block game here against Atlanta, that's why our average is pretty high. But again, she's capable of getting those blocks. But below average as far as fantasy points, averaging about 29 to 30 fantasy points, and that's 10 below her average, so that's a concern. No, she's been averaging 37. She's been averaging 10 below her average for the year against Dallas. Dallas only shooting 45% against Dallas, 80% from the free throw line. She is only averaging 5 rebounds per game in the 3 games she has played against Dallas. That is very little rebounds. But she's been averaging 2.5 blocks and putting in about 29 fantasy points, which I had just said is about 10, 11 fantasy points less than her average for the season. So it's a concern there. But she is definitely in playing a matchup like this. Liz Cambage, $100 cheaper, has 60-point upside, so I'm kind of favoring Liz a little bit more. Liz is someone that obviously Dallas needs to have a spectacular game here for Dallas to even have a shot. She's going to need to be in that 50-point or better fantasy point level. If not, I just can't see them winning. But let's not worry about the last game, because obviously they didn't play all their players in the last game. She only played 20 minutes, and she did put up 20 fantasy points in that stretch. But we know she has 60-point upside. Last game against Dallas, Phoenix didn't have a spectacular game, 26 and 24, still 1 fantasy point per minute. And the prior game before that, I don't have those numbers, but last 3 games though, she's averaging 56% from the floor, 66% from 3, averaging 10 rebounds per game and a block, and averaging about 40 fantasy points, just one fantasy point or around one fantasy point less than her average. Okay. She is a better shooter at home than she is on the road, but she is going to have to shoot well today. All right. Shooting 54% field goal percentage with 9 rebounds on average and 1.5 blocks and averaging 38 to as much as 39 fantasy points per game on the road. Versus Phoenix, she's shooting 44% and 66% from 3. She's only taken 3 3-pointers and hit 2 out of the 3. But the drawback, she's definitely been not same as Griner. They definitely are not averaging a lot of rebounds against one another. Only 5 rebounds a game, just like Griner in their matchups over the course of those 3 games, which is really a surprise. And then, of course, she is also below her average, just like Griner, as far as fantasy points per game versus one another. She's at 28 fantasy points per game. So they're pretty much around the same in every category, except I think that Liz Cambage needs to actually have the big game today. So I'm leaning towards her, but both of them are in play. Coming down a little further, I'm not on Glory Johnson. I normally am not. She's still a little pricey. Stevens is still a little pricey too, but I like some of the upside she brings. She obviously is a rookie, a little more energetic, does a number of other things. She can rebound, she can assist, she definitely defends, gets some steals, and she can score. I have her here 6,200. You need about 31 to cover that price. She's averaging 21. 6 out of her last pretty much 8 games, she's been averaging 21 or better. All right. In the last game against Phoenix, we'll go with those numbers here because they don't have the whole schedule here. 35 in 33 minutes, so more than 1 fantasy point per minute. She put up a very, very, very nice game. 15, 7, 2, and 3. Did have 3 turnovers. But, I like the numbers. I think she is someone definitely to consider here. As a Ray Stevens, I kind of like here at 6,200 if I'm going to go with anybody else from Dallas. Thornton, I'm not on Thornton, but she has had, she's capable of putting up 20 to 25, and she normally plays 30 minutes or better. Expect her to play around those amount of minutes. Down on the lower tier here, probably a little gamble here, maybe on Kayla George. 3,900, need about 19, and she's averaging 8. But she's been playing 15 or better minutes. Pretty consistent. 13, 17, 14, 8, and 9. Probably around maybe 15 minutes per game. And her numbers are looking pretty good. More than a fantasy point per minute. If you tally this up, it's somewhere near that range. And she's had 11 or better in 3 out of her last 4 games. She's been averaging more than 11 fantasy points. So she could be a nice little value play here. Down on the bottom, Angel Robinson, I noticed she got some minutes in the last game. I don't know if that means anything or not. 13 minutes, got nearly pretty much 12 fantasy points. She may get some minutes today, so someone to consider as well as a value play at 3,200. And that's pretty much it for this game, man. That's what I'm looking at right now. Minnesota, LA, we have implied totals of 152.5 with LA favored at home by 6.5. These teams have played each other 4 times this year, and LA has won 3 out of the 4 matchups. I don't see no different today. I think LA at home is going to be really, really tough. So I see Minnesota's championship reign going down the drain today. But nonetheless, we still go over the numbers. In the 4 matchups this year, Minnesota, LA has given up to Minnesota 49 points per game up front and 21.5 points per game in the backcourt, which is minimal in the backcourt. Minnesota has given up to LA 44.5 points per game in the front court, which is 4 points better than LA has, and 31.7 points per game in the backcourt, which I expected. So we definitely could target LA in the backcourt. I love LA's backcourt against Minnesota. As you know, I always target Minnesota's backcourt, and they have been playing well enough as of late, Minnesota's backcourt, but this is a tough matchup for them because there's a lot of little nice plays. LA has so many players with different types of styles of game that comes into the game during the course of games that could be very, very tough on Minnesota. Over the course of the last 3 games, just some more team stats. Minnesota 55.3 points per game given up to their opponents in the front court and 35.3 to the back court. So over the last couple of games, even though they were looking good for a little while there, last 3 games they've actually been taking a little bit of a drop as far as defending. So definitely an opportunity here for Los Angeles at home. Los Angeles has tightened everything up. They're giving up 43 points per game to the front court over the course of the last 3 games and 31.3 points per game to the backcourt. So in both phases of the game, they have Minnesota pretty much locked in. And of course, we have Minnesota and LA's team stats here for the season. Pretty close in points. Better field goal percentage shooting team is LA. They're pretty even in 3-point shooting, free throw shooting, rebounding. Rebounding, we have Minnesota. They're a better rebounding team, nearly 6 or 5.5 more rebounds per game. Pretty much close on the assist totals here. Steals, LA a better stealing team. Turnover ratio, LA is better at not turning over the ball. And then we get to the opposition, but as you can see here, LA 35% shooting from the floor from 3, and they're holding down opponents only to 30. So Minnesota not being a big 3-point shooting team, that definitely does not hurt LA in any way. But over here, as you can see, Minnesota gives up 34%, and that's a problem. So that's where I see where LA in their backcourt could definitely do some damage as far as the 3-point shooting. So, I mean, when I look at the game, Chelsea Gray automatically stands out at me. Her price has come down quite a bit over the last few games as well. She's had some off and on games, but this is a game that I really like Chelsea Gray in. You know, Chelsea Gray definitely in play, 6,800, you know. At that price, you need about 33, 34, pretty much. And, you know, she's averaging close to 30, so the price is not that far away from her average. Last 2 games, not a whole lot, 25 and 16, but we know she's capable of getting 40. The last time she played Minnesota, right here, 43 fantasy points in 32 minutes, shot 18, 5, 9, and 2. Had an awesome game. The prior game before that, she had a 28 spot in 36 minutes. Okay, so very, very good there. She's shooting 49% from the floor at home, which is an advantage. In the last 4 games, she's shooting 46% field goal percentage and 30% from 3, and averaging about 35 to 36 fantasy points per game, which is 6 points higher than her average. So I kind of like those numbers already. You know, so Chelsea Gray in play. And that 46% is against Minnesota. I apologize. That's against Minnesota, and 30% shooting from 3 with an average of 36 fantasy points per game. So I definitely like her here. I think she's someone you could definitely shoot for. Miss Augustus, not on Augustus, 5,300. I kind of, like I said from the previous game, I kind of like these girls here. I think 1 or 2 of these girls here are going to have massive minutes, and they're going to be a surprise, sneaky play here today. It's just a matter of whom it may be. And right now, I really don't have any idea who it may be. I kind of like R. Will over here, and I kind of like Lindsay Whalen. Lindsay Whalen with the opportunity of finishing up her career. You know, here could be her last game of the year. I can see her getting some minutes. So, you know, someone definitely to consider, man. But I kind of like, out of all the girls down here, I kind of like Miss Williams here at 4,400. You need about 22 from her. She's averaging 12. But she's been playing really some significant minutes here. 20, 23, 29, 24, and 26. I kind of like that. She's in that 20 to 29 range, and she's getting in the 20s. You know, she's capable of getting you 20 to as much as 25. And who knows? She may even be able to get you up to the higher, even to the early, at least a 30 spot. You know, so I kind of like her here in this matchup. And she played, what we got here? She's had 20-plus games at 5 straight games. That's 14 points above her average. So she's actually really, really playing very well right now. Kind of like Williams as a sneaky play here. Lindsay Whalen could be another one that could be pretty sneaky. I'm not on Carson's or Sims, but I think either one of those can possibly see sometimes. Sims at $5,000, a little pricey for me, but Sims may be at $400 cheaper, maybe someone to consider. I'll let you know a little bit more on the live show if she is definitely someone that we can have in play. But I definitely like Williams, and I think Lindsay Whalen could be an opportunity here with Whalen as well. Whalen at 4,300, you need about 21, 22. She's averaging 14. Obviously, she played 26 minutes. They gave her the minutes. You know, we all thought that would be the case. It's her last game in Minnesota, and they definitely honored her by allowing her to play more minutes, and she came off with 34 fantasy points. So I don't know if she's going to do that again today, but I think she'll get 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even slightly more than 20 minutes, especially if she gets on the floor and she's productive. If she gets some shots off, and they will probably keep her in the game a little bit longer. So I like her here, 16 in 23 minutes versus this team the last time around. So that's not too bad. Right here against LA, she 4.8, and then the previous time 16 spot in 23 minutes. So I mean, you never know. During the course of the last 3 games, she's shooting 55% and 50% from 3, with an average of 14 to as much as 15 fantasy points per game. So you never know. She may be one they may just count on to get some value points from today. And I think at 4,300, that's not a bad play. I'm not on Elena Beard. I mean, she could be a sneaky play out of nowhere, but I think that they have really, as you can see just in the price jump for Williams, Williams is getting a little bit more time on the floor, and she's being a little more productive. So I can see where Beard may get minimal minutes once again here in this playoff game. But we'll see. She's a great defender. They may want to plug her in a little bit more than Williams. It's tough to tell. But I'm leaning towards Williams. Tanisha Wright obviously is in play 4,000. She has 30-point upside. She's been playing massive minutes. She played minimal minutes in the last game, and that's due to obviously Lindsay Whalen playing a little bit more. But still got 21 minutes. I still get to see her in that high 20s, mid-20 range, and she's capable of getting you even close to 40, as you can see here in 34 minutes. Don't know if she'll play 30-somewhat minutes today, but you never know. But I think she's definitely in play. In the last 4 games, she's shooting 41% from the floor and 46% from 3. So that I like. And away from home, she's shooting better than she's shooting at home. She's shooting 41% from the floor and 42% from 3, averaging about 10 or 11 fantasy points. So Ms. Wright is someone definitely to consider. I'm all done there with those girls. Coming over here to the front court, Sylvia Fowles, 8,500. Definitely in play. You need about 43 to cover that price. And, I mean, 5 out of the last 6 games, she's been pretty much, as you can see here, averaging 40 or better. So she's at least exceeding value at the moment. 29 in the previous games against LA. Only a 29 spot in 28 minutes. The last game out, which is right here. Nope, right here. And then the game before that, in game 3, she put up a 48 spot in 34 minutes. Definitely had a much more better shooting game. In the last 4 games, she's averaging 66% field goal percentage and averaging 48 fantasy points per game, which is 8 points above her average. So she's definitely been playing well as of late. On top of that, away from home, she's shooting 60% and only averaging 36 fantasy points per game. But versus LA in the 6 games, 61% shooting, 80% free throw shooting, averaging 9 rebounds per game with 1.5 blocks and 35 to 36 fantasy points per game, which is below her average against LA, but not too bad. And we know that she has that 50-point upside. So definitely someone to consider. I definitely love Candace Parker here, even more so. $400 cheaper, man. She's 6 out of her last pretty much 8 games here at 39 or better, which is her average. So she's then playing above her average. She did have a 55 spot against Minnesota the last time she played them. And the prior time before that, she put up 39, nearly 40 in 34 minutes. So she's had 2 fantastic games in a row against this team. At home, she's been fantastic, 49% shooting and almost 30% from 3, averaging 35 fantasy points per game, slightly below her average of 38, 39. But she's been doing very, very well. Against Minnesota in the 3 games, 53% field goal percentage, 46% from 3, averaging 8 rebounds and 4 assists and 1.5 blocks, 44 fantasy points per game. She is definitely should be able to meet value and exceed it. Definitely like Candace Parker here, more than I like Fowles. Maya Moore, in play as well, 7,500, 37 you need from her. She's averaging 32. She's had tough games versus LA, man. Really has. Only averaging 14.6 in 25 minutes in the last game. She only put a 14 in 25, and in game 3, only 23 fantasy points. If I could find it here. 23 fantasy points in 33 minutes. So she's had definitely her troubles with LA. I'm not in favor of her, but then again, you cannot fade her out because more than likely some people are seeing these numbers and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not on Maya Moore. I like Candace Parker and Agumake more, especially if Agumake is playing. And that's pretty much it. They're not going to go with her. But versus LA, she's only shooting 36% from the floor and 33% from three, and only averaging 22, pretty much close to 23 fantasy points per game, which is about 13 fantasy points below her average. So definitely someone that you could possibly fade today. I'm not going to be on her, but again, she's probably going to be low owned just simply because of those numbers. Nneka Ogwumike is in play if she is playing. At the moment, she's a game time decision, so you got to stay on top of that. It says here that she is questionable for today's matchup. It will be a shame if they don't have her, because definitely that will hurt LA really considerably in this game. I doubt very much if she has a little bit of an illness, she's going to play, even if she just feels a little horrible. Unless it will have to be like, she has to be like in her deathbed or something like that. I think even a player with a flu-like symptoms will still play in a game like this. But I mean, we'll see, and we'll stay on top of that throughout the day and see if we get any news. But 7,100, you pretty much need 35. She's averaging 31, and she has had 3 straight games at 25 plus, not really exceeding her average and not putting up those large numbers. But she is capable of doing a whole lot. Okay. She has pretty much 45 point or better upside. Last 3 games, she's averaging 44% from the floor, with 5 rebounds and 1.5 steals on average, with 28 fantasy points. Okay, the numbers are not huge, but against Minnesota, 54% shooting from the floor, averaging 7 rebounds per game, 1.5 steals, and averaging nearly close to 30 fantasy points, which is pretty much close to her average. So Nneka Ogwumike in play. They're gonna really need her. If they don't have her, obviously you want to jump all over Jontel Lavender at 4,100. Okay. And you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I went all the way over here. Yeah, did I cover? I covered everybody. I'm sorry. All right, so Jontel Lavender. Jontel Lavender will be in play. 4,100 in the game. She just recently played for Ogwumike and put up 25 fantasy points in 35 minutes. Okay. The last time she played, she has played. Let me see it. She hasn't played much against Minnesota. Only, as you can see here, I'm looking. She only played 14 minutes and 2.2 fantasy points in that game. And over here, 15 minutes and only 10 fantasy points. Again, not a part of the rotation on a consistent basis when Ogwumike is playing. If Ogwumike plays, obviously she is someone that you will not play. But if Ogwumike is out, she will be in play. During the course of the time that Ms. Ogwumike has been out, she put up 20, pretty much an average of 26, 27 in those 3 or 4 games. And she had 2 30-point games. These are the games right here. This one, and this one were the games that she filled in for Ogwumike. So she has potential to give you 25 or better if she's playing for Nneka Ogwumike. So Jontel Lavender, someone to consider here at 4,100. Cecilia Zaldanzini. Zaldanzini, 3,919. I think she's okay here as well. She played massive minutes the last 2 games, but didn't put up a whole lot of fantasy points. That's the only drawback. But 12 and 17 minutes against Minnesota the last time, against against LA the last time, right here. And 7 and 10 minutes the prior time before that, which is not a whole lot. But in 3 games against Minnesota, that little bit of time that she has played, she has shot 47% and averaging 10 fantasy points. So someone to consider there. Maria Vadiva could be someone to consider too. 3,800. You need about 18. She's averaging 9. And if there's no Ogwumike, obviously this will help in her getting some minutes as well. Not a whole massive amount of minutes, but she can get anywhere between 10 and possibly 15. And as you can see, she has the potential to get you 23. But against Minnesota, 2 games against Minnesota, 67% shooting. Okay. 7 fantasy points. All right. What I like also is that at home, she's averaging 57% shooting from the floor and 50% as well, more than 80% from the foul line. So, I mean, Maria Vadiva, definitely someone to consider here as well, as a possible value play at 3,800, especially if Nneka Ogwumike does not play much. Fag Bentley, all of a sudden, is starting to get minutes again. So you see, just never know with Minnesota. 10, then 15, and 19 over the last 3 games. She almost put up 1 fantasy point per minute in the last outing against Washington. So 15 and 19 over the last couple of games as far as minutes. Can get you 15 to 17 fantasy points, as you can see. 16, 17 could get you in that area. She needs to play about 15 to 20 minutes. Only played 9 minutes against LA the last time out, 12 minutes, and got 2.6, and then 8 and 3. But I mean, that can change if they feel they definitely need her up front, especially if Sylvia Fowles gets into trouble, which we know she has a tendency to. And that's another thing that I forgot to point out. The last time these teams played, that's what they did. They double teamed, they trapped her, they made her make a lot of turnovers, a lot of careless passes, and she also got frustrated and committed fouls. So Sylvia Fowles, this is why I favor in this matchup definitely Candace Parker for $400 cheaper, but anything can happen. But that's pretty much where I'm at right now in this 2-game slate playoff matches. I will be back with the live show later on. The games start today at 8:30. Okay, 8:30. Take into account that that last game is at 10:30. Shouldn't be a big factor. The only problem is that we don't have no word about a Nneka Ogwumike that can hurt us. So hopefully before 8:30 we'll have some news on Nneka Ogwumike. So I'll be back with the live show at about 7:30, folks. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So everybody have a good day, and we'll be back later. Drop a like on the video. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. And I'll see you guys at 7:30 tonight.